the economy cannot sustain subsidy. That is exactly what Mr. Ibe Kachiko, the new MD of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, is saying. That's NNPC. But what does this mean? Are we about to deregulate the petroleum sector? Well, joining us to discuss this and more is the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industries Director General Muda Yusuf. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's look at this. Now, a lot has happened with the NNPC. We've had people laid off, people replaced. What would be your first line of thought when it comes to what the president has done with the NNPC?
The NNPC is a very strategic institution. Strategic because it manages what we can call our strategic resource in this country. The economy is largely dependent on the oil and gas sector, both for foreign exchange to the tune of over 90%, and also for revenue to the tune of close to between 75 to 80%. So it's a very strategic institution, and the institution has been characterized by a lot of issues, especially transparency issues, corruption, and all of that has plagued that institution over the past few years. So given the kind of orientation or the disposition of the current administration, one of the first things that this administration intends to do is to clean up the system. And the NNPC is perceived as one of the main areas in which we have a lot of leakages, challenges with regards to the oil revenue, transparency, accountability, all sorts of issues like that have been with NNPC. So it is not surprising that one of the first things that the president is doing is to take steps to clean up the place. And what we are seeing is part of the process of cleaning up the place.
So the replacements, the sacking, you don't have a problem with that? You think it's all in the whole, it's in line with the anti-corruption war?
Yeah, it's in line with the anti-corruption war, and it's in line with making the system more efficient. Although in the process, some good hands may also be affected. Because when you begin to sack people like that massively, invariably some people that are also very good may inadvertently also be laid off.
So the idea is a clean-up, and of course that's now stretched into cleaning up those whose hands are involved with NNPC. But over the weekend we saw the US ambassador to Nigeria, James Enwiso. He was saying that his country will support NNPC get to their goals, achieve what they want to accomplish. But we know that we're discussing the cleanup that's necessary. But when I was seeing these headlines, I was wondering, in what way do you feel that the US would be able to actually help NNPC reach their goals? Or is this just it's the ambassador, he needs to talk, he needs to say, we support you. What kind of support can we actually receive from the United States?
Well, I don't see much support in terms of the capacity to clean up the process. I believe that it's a question of just identifying with the philosophy of the present administration.
So no real help, really, then? That's just, we're in line with how you're thinking?
No. I don't see any direct support. If you talk of things like maybe insecurity and things like that, yes. But in terms of support, the only support we can get maybe from the US is in terms of information of those who have been part of the corruption in the process.
Okay.
If people have been involved in all this oil theft, they have lodged funds abroad, just as the president said, he said he has been getting some information. And during the visit, even the president of the United States assured him that whatever support they could give, they will give, in order to be able to trace those funds that have been looted from the treasury, and particularly from the oil and gas sector, the beneficiaries of the oil theft and so on. I think it is from that perspective that you can expect some form of support. But in terms of restructuring the NNPC, it's something that you can handle internally. We have the capacity to do that.
One thing we're handling well, I don't know when last I have, maybe had a drive-through activity with the gas stations. I'm not sure when. You have to target, early in the morning on Saturday or Sunday, and then you have a drive-through experience. But we've had this shortage of petroleum supply in Nigeria for the past 4 months. I'm not sure what the president is doing about this, but then we do know that there is cold feet with the marketers. And then, you know, we have the recent call for deregulating the downstream, even by Mr. Ibe Kachiko himself. And that's shocking for me, you know, ever since, you know, we also got the report that NNPC might also become the sole importer of petroleum products. I don't know how to place both together. Please help me.
You see, there are a bit of contradictions currently. Initially, even the president himself said that he was not yet persuaded by the arguments against subsidy. You know, and that gave a lot of industry players a lot of concern, because it is removal of subsidy or deregulation is seen as one of the major critical reforms that we need to undertake in this sector. Now, listening to the GMD of NNPC recently at that forum, I was there myself. Okay. That was a bit reassuring. But again, it's a bit in conflict with what the president has said. But I want to believe that the president will have to listen, or it is advising for the president to listen to those who are players in the sector, those who understand the industry. Granted, he has also been a minister in that, but that was some 30 years ago.
He might be the minister in September.
But things have changed. You know, a lot of things have changed. The oil industry of today is not the same thing as the oil industry of 30 years ago. So I expect him to concede a lot of the strategies for reform to these experts,
but when
to those who are more contemporary in the industry. So
when can we have a timeline? You know, it seems that, you know, we've got a new government that's come in, and we've been waiting. We've in a game of wait and see. But for the people that are watching and they're hearing what we're saying and they're thinking, okay, we understand, yes, there needs to be reforms. So when are we going to actually see a difference? When are we going to now stop? When are we going to stop curing? The fuel scarcity issue has now become a norm. Yes. I even forget, like, the fact that I see queues everywhere, every now and then, I'm no longer surprised. I think we need to know not just that it's happening, things will change, but when? Is there any sort of timeline where we could be thinking, okay, by this time, we can start seeing some kind of change?
Well, I think we are beginning to even see some change. In the last few weeks, have you seen any queue in Lagos?
We still don't have the official statement, sir. That
yes, but
they are selling at 87 naira, and that brings me, you know, we know that they are even sanctioning some people like NNPC, as high and mighty as they are. The DPR is sanctioning them for selling above pump price and so many, you know, under G things.
And we can't just look within Lagos either.
Yes, I know. What the point I'm making is that there have been a slight improvement in the situation, by virtue of the fact that the president is also cleaning up the process and trying to straighten out the supply especially through the NNPC. But fundamentally, we still have the issue of the fact that the sector is not yet stable. Because the whole issue of supply of petroleum products is still revolving around the NNPC. And what the operators in the sector are saying that this regime is not sustainable. What is sustainable is to get the private sector to be able to operate independently in that sector as a pure commercial business.
But it's interesting to put the attention on the private sector, because over the weekend we're also seeing that the NNPC might introduce community-based security, because we can't talk about the supply without talking about the fact that we have these pipelines that are vandalized and we have oil theft. But you're now NNPC looking into those in the community, you know, taking ownership in terms of this is ours, we must protect it. So then it's not going to be solely, you know, we're not solely looking at the private world. And I looked at that story and I wondered, is that really enough security-wise? Can we really be thinking of laying that burden on a community?
Yes, you see, there are a number of issues with what the NNPC is doing. There is the issue of the provision of petroleum products, which we feel that if we have a larger space for the private sector to take part in that process, the problem will be much easier to deal with. There's also the issue of security. Now, security, because of the nature of the pipelines, because you are talking of pipelines that traverse so many communities. So you need community involvement. Just as the police is now talking about community policing
as well.
For purposes of security, the involvement of the community is very critical. It is true for general security. It is also true even for the pipeline security. So that is the logic of what the NNPC is saying.
But sir, do you think that deregulation is the next step for us? Do you think that will be healthy? I mean, and then going in line with the reforms that the president is championing, do you think deregulating the downstream sector will be it for Nigeria at this point?
That is the way to go.
That means us taking away subsidy, officially making it known to marketers that there's no subsidy, so
that they can get on with their business. Because as we speak now, they are still owed close to 400 billion. Because you have to pay them for difference in the landing costs.
Interest rate.
You have to pay interest rate. You have to pay exchange rate differential. For how long can you continue to do that? Annually, we have been spending close to ₦1 trillion annually on subsidy. When we are faced with a situation of dwindling revenue, salaries are not being paid, the hospitals are not being funded, the public schools are collapsing, the infrastructure issues are there. You need funds for all of this.
What else is involved in deregulating the downstream sector, apart from subsidy taking off?
Apart from subsidy, you just allow people who are interested in the business to come into the business. Competition is there. More investments will come in by the private sector. We are likely to see more refineries. We are likely to see a replication of the telecoms model in the petroleum downstream. These are and this will create a lot of jobs. And it will also reduce the pressure on our foreign exchange market. Close to 40% of our foreign exchange is being spent on importation of petroleum products.
But
that's part of the why we have so much crisis, even with our forex markets.
At this point, Mr. Muda, what worries me is this past 3 to 4 months that we've had, we're not sure if there's subsidy still ongoing. We don't know why there is fuel, why there is no fuel. Is the government still going to be held liable to pay the interest rate and the interest rate to these marketers?
For as long as the policy regime exists or subsists, the government will pay them.
Whether or not they're carrying it out.
Yes, because the policy is that you import petroleum products. The government has given an undertaking to pay the differentials in the landing cost and your purchase price. And if there's any delay in payment, the government has given an undertaking to pay you the interest. If there's any change in exchange rate, the government has... I mean, it's a whole complex web of unnecessary responsibility that the government has put on itself. You know, it's a major distraction to government and even to governance.
And while we're cleaning up,
we get the government to exit from all of this and focus strictly on regulation.
But the government is also going to focus on probing the NNPC. We can't forget that either. And I also wonder how efficient that will be and what could be, what can come out of probing the NNPC. Do you see any point in probing the NNPC?
There is, not just NNPC. There has been a whole lot of mismanagement of the nation's resources.
So it must be looked into.
At the federal level, at the state. I mean, we have to, because unless there are consequences for this kind of actions, this kind of thing will continue. In China, for instance, the penalty for corruption or stealing of public is death.
Yeah.
They have a reason for doing that because they know the damage, the destruction that corruption does to a system.
Will we have anyone to lead us if we bring that kind of penalty?
No, I'm not saying that we should bring that out, but there has to be consequences.
Yes, of course.
Because if there are no consequences, the cycle will continue. And it will continue to affect the economy in all sorts of ways.
But how do you feel about NNPC becoming the sole importer of petroleum products in Nigeria?
It is not the best thing.
So it's conflicting.
It's conflict. That is what we are saying, that the government needs to take steps to quickly put in place the necessary reforms.
And then,
so that we take the government out of this, let the private sector do it, so that government can focus more on more important social and development issues.
But you mentioned that the president has championed, he has, spearheaded this ministry before. If he's to do it again, would you say, go daddy or go president? Would you say that
he has no business doing it
whatsoever?
You don't have to micromanage.
No, but
he's the president of the country.
We can have a mixture. You want the president's hands off completely. The private sector deals solely.
Yes,
wow.
And you have a regulatory agency. Just as you have in telecoms, we used to have NITEL, and we knew what we went through with NITEL. But now we have private sector have taken over the play, and you have the NCC, which is a government institution that is regulating the telecoms industry. That is a model that should be replicated in the oil and gas sector.
What we hope is that these reforms will attract more investors, because I'm sure that's exactly what's behind Mr. Ibe Kachiku's mind.
Yeah, it will attract a lot of investment. More jobs will be created. We see more refineries. We see a lesser pressure on foreign exchange. You know, this
conversation will continue till, you know, we start to see these reforms, like Eno says. We want to see this thing stop. But thank you so much, sir, for coming and shedding light more on this with the NNPC. Let's go over to the news center where Victor Orororo is standing by for News Express. The Good Morning Nigeria show will continue, but then again, we'll let our head down for entertainment and on news, sports, lots more to be watched.
So, did you like what you just saw? I know you did. It's very simple. If you want to see more, just subscribe to our channel right now.